And is a 4-day work week practical or impractical? We get you a report.
One World Trade Center, that is the one where the
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban patrol now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive. India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time.
Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us here on WION World is One. My name is Molly Gambhir. A quick look first at the top stories that we are tracking at this hour. After nearly 2 months of being under siege, the southern city of Mariupol in Ukraine could fall into Russian hands within hours as the two sides agree to a humanitarian corridor to allow the civilians to flee the port city. The United Nations says more than 5 million Ukrainians have now fled the country following the Russian invasion. This is Europe's fastest growing refugee crisis since the Second World War. A security pact between the Solomon Islands and China will not undermine peace. The Prime Minister of the Pacific Island nation tells the Parliament in a bid to ease the worries of the US and its allies. China's commercial capital, Shanghai, reports no new COVID-19 infections outside quarantine areas in 2 districts on Wednesday, fanning hopes that the tide is turning in its pandemic battle. Iraq was hit by its 3rd heavy dust storm in 2 weeks, temporarily grounding flights at Baghdad and Najaf airports as the weather phenomenon grows increasingly frequent. Hello and welcome. You're watching WION Climate Tracker. My name is Molly Gambhir. North India is in the grip of a searing heat wave. Major parts of Delhi recorded high temperatures, making it one of the hottest days of the season yet. The prolonged dry spell has led to severe hot weather conditions in northern India, with temperatures soaring to 40 degrees Celsius. The states of Rajasthan and Haryana also reeling under early heat waves. On Tuesday, weather stations in Delhi recorded temperatures of over 43 degrees Celsius. However, in a brief respite, a light spell of rain is expected on Wednesday. India is witnessing record-breaking temperatures, and this is only the beginning of summer. This is an indication of what may lie ahead in the summer months to come. What's making matters worse at the same time is that this year the heat waves have started as early as April. Also, March recorded some of the warmest days since 1901, and experts say that such high temperatures are linked to the changing climate patterns of our planet. Studies by the Indian Weather Department showing how every 10 years the number of heat wave days in India is increasing at a rapid pace. Apart from climate change, experts point out that increasing concretization, deforestation and changes in land use in cities have also pushed up the mercury levels. The heat waves have not spared the Himalayan states of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. These states usually experience cooler temperatures during summer, and people flock to these states to escape the heat. But even these hill states are witnessing relatively higher temperatures over the last 1 decade. Higher temperatures have led to increased power demands as well. Coal India Limited has also increased supplies by 14.2% to coal-based electricity generating plants. However, they are still hard put to meet the rising demand. California has faced a large number of wildfires in the last 2 years. A California forest was burned down by a wildfire last summer. Without the canopy of trees, snow is melting faster than usual. With climate change causing major wildfires across the region, researchers want to study the dual effects of wildfires, speeding up the snow melting process. And without a tree canopy, snow is exposed to more sunlight. Carbon specks from burnt trees also end up darkening the snow, which makes it absorb more sunlight and speeds up the melting process. This means that snow is melting into rivers earlier than usual and could leave the rivers with less water flowing in the summer when it's most needed. Spring heat waves have already melted California's limited snowfall.
Down. Now up is 62. We know when the snowpack melts off earlier that you're going to have a much longer dry season, and a dry season means more severe fires.
Communities affected by the drought depend on the melting of snow in spring. Snowmelt runoff replenishes reservoirs during the drier months. Researchers are trying to understand how communities will be affected by the early melting of snow and how to best prepare for the future. The long-term effects of the wildfires could be major droughts, disrupting the lives of communities in the West that rely on melting snow for their water supplies.
The work that we're doing here and elsewhere in these burned forests studying carbon shedding on snow is laying the groundwork for understanding how that's impacting snowmelt and how we can improve water management in the future.
Scientists in Australia may soon change the way the world looks at electric motor vehicles in a bid to push boundaries of modern-day mobility. A team of Australian scientists have decided to embark on a 9,400-mile-long journey on a Tesla car with solar panels. The project, called The Charge Around Australia, aims at testing the endurance and potential performance of these panels for other applications as well. The car would be powered by 18 printed plastic solar panels, each 18 meters long, rolling them out beside the vehicle to soak up sunlight when it needs to be charged. The team from University of Newcastle and the inventors of these solar panels consider this project as an actual bed test for the panels.
There's all the details that we're really interested in around the printed solar technology. How will it last during the journey, unrolling, how will the charging characteristics work in various parts of Australia. But if we think about it, if we take a step back and we think about what we're actually doing, we're taking a vehicle to the remotest parts of Australia, probably even the remotest parts of the world, and taking and charging it with a lightweight technology that can generate electricity from sunlight. It strikes me that this is actually an ideal testbed to give us information about how we would go about using and powering technology in other remote locations, for example, in space. So for us, I think this also provides a pathway to showing how printed solar can be used as energy generation, for example, for a mission to Mars.
Printed solar panels are lightweight laminated PET plastic and can be made at a cost of less than $10 a square meter. These are made on a commercial printer originally used for printing wine labels. During the 84-day-long Tesla journey, the team has planned to visit about 70 schools to give students a taste of what the future may hold. The Newcastle University team believes these panels can act as a game changer in the way Australians view electric vehicles, and it could help in easing their range anxiety as well. Such innovations can also provide long-term solutions to the problems that the communities face with day in and day out impact of climate change. The success of this project could actually drastically reduce the travel cost of the cars and provide a maintainable solution to reduce the dependency on other resources. The team is also hoping to please the Tesla owner Elon Musk by the use of their innovative technology with a Tesla car. Iraq's capital has been engulfed in a thick blanket of dust. This is the third dust storm to hit the country in 2 weeks. The storm was expected to lift on Thursday. The storm stalled the operations at the Baghdad International Airport as the flights were suspended due to poor visibility. The airport, serving the Shiite holy city of Najaf to the south, also faced a similar situation and had to keep its flights grounded. Early this month, the two dust storms left dozens hospitalized with respiratory problems. The meteorological office says that the dust is affecting the entire country. However, central and southern regions remain the worst affected. The weather department says that the increase in the dust storm is linked to climate change, and it's feared that such storms would become more common in the time to come.
Iraqis always suffer from this dusty weather, especially in the summer. Dust enters through doors and windows as if you were sitting outside. Whether you were inside the house or outside, it is the same thing. The children suffer from it. Dust is deadly because most Iraqis suffer from suffocation and allergies.
Low rainfall and rising temperatures have made Iraq more vulnerable to climate change. Experts claim that these factors could threaten social and economic disasters in the country as well and lead to these disasters. In early April, Environment Ministry of Iraq also warned that the country could face 272 days of dust a year in the coming decades. The people of East Africa are facing a severe drought. Scarce rainfall and high temperatures have worsened the situation. Hunger and malnutrition is widespread, and there is very little hope of relief. Our next report tells you more.
Delayed rains in the Horn of Africa has left it vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. East African countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia and the Sudan make up the continent's horn-shaped peninsula. More than 20 million people in the region are preparing for the most severe drought since 1981. The UN authorities recorded high temperatures and scarce rainfall for the last 2 months. The region is heavily dependent on agriculture. Extreme weather conditions have put the entire population at risk of starvation. The UN's World Food Programme estimates that about 14 million in the region are starving. They warn that the worsening of drought can affect more population.
After 3 failed rainy seasons, it's estimated that the region is the driest it has been in 40 years. We're now waiting for the current rainy season to arrive. It's late, and we're very concerned of what the implications will be if it is below average. The estimates suggest that the numbers affected could skyrocket to 20 million people. We need the ability to respond. We need the rain.
Approximately 1.4 million children under 5 in the Horn of Africa are vulnerable to acute malnutrition.
This drought is the worst drought that we have seen for the last 20 years. It affected the whole community, especially children, especially the under 5 children. So we are getting here a lot of malnourished children, more than the children that we have seen 6 months ago. The number of admissions have increased from 5 patients per day to 15 patients per day.
East Africa endured a harrowing drought in 2017 as well. Rapid action by the community helped avert a famine in Somalia then. Similar action is required now. The UN agencies have asked for $473 million over the next 6 months to deal with the present crisis. The region is already bleeding with issues of poverty and locust invasion, and an acute drought will only worsen the condition. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Scorching heat is not just troubling human beings. Even wildlife, plagued with the soaring temperatures in southern Mexican city of Mérida, having a tough time. Have a look at these visuals of these zoo animals enjoying their icy retreat to beat the heat. If you were a headphone-wearing music addict who kept a keen note of everything happening on the radio in the late 2000s and early 2010s, chances are that you have found yourself dancing to the tracks of J-Storm. The British Asian crossover star toured India recently, just minutes before his Mumbai concert. My colleague Erin Jogjoka had an exclusive chat with him. The hitmaker spoke about his love for India and his inner calling.
We at WION are excited to have the Indian origin British artist who is joining us from Mumbai. Jay Sean, hello and welcome to WION World as One. Thank you for this opportunity. How have you been?
Of course, thank you for having me, guys. Now, I've been incredible. I have had the most wonderful tour of India because, especially bearing in mind, over the pandemic, we weren't able to tour as artists. That was so difficult for us. And I usually come to India at least every year. So it's been really nice for me to be back.
You had shows in New Delhi, Bengaluru, and now you have one in Mumbai. How has the response been so far?
I mean, honestly, absolutely electrifying. We have very different shows depending on what part of the world I am performing in. So in Delhi, of course, it's a very heavy Punjabi roots demographic. So it allows me to be able to drop certain songs that will really, really react well in that audience that I don't necessarily get to perform in other parts of the world. So that was super fun. And then yesterday in Bangalore, we almost got rained out because we had a outdoor venue. It was like almost like an amphitheater, except it started pouring down with rain. But the show went on and it was absolutely wonderful.
Many people may not know this, but your fans do. You are a self-confessed science geek. How did you transform from studying medicine and being a science-oriented person to being a musician?
You know, I think we all have a few things that we are into, hobbies, aside from our profession. I have friends who are brain surgeons who also love DJing, or who love to go and play golf, or wish they were amateur tennis players. So we all have these things that we enjoy doing, and then the other thing that ends up as our work. And sometimes both overlap. And that's a beautiful thing when you love what you do too. Now, believe it or not, I did love medicine, and I still do, and I'm still very sort of into science and the brain and the body, and that will never really leave me. But the music, you know, it was always meant for me.
When did you decide that I just want to sing?
You know, it was more than just singing for me. Yes, I, of course, enjoy the process of singing. Yes, I enjoy writing songs. And yes, I enjoy performing them. But what I wanted to do was to change the way that South Asian people, such as myself, were portrayed in society. Because when I was a kid, and I listened to R&B music and I listened to hip hop, there wasn't anybody who looked like me on TV. There was no brown boy doing mainstream music. And I thought to myself, well, that needs to change, doesn't it? Look how many of us there are in this world. We're the second largest demographic on planet Earth. You can't name me one Indian pop star? Are you serious? So I was like, this needs to change. And that to this day has been something that I've always advocated for. I've always wanted more of us in mainstream representation. I've always fought for that. I've always tried to break down the barriers, and that to me is my calling.
Well, we at WION wish you all the very best. Finally, Jay Sean, it's not every day when we get a chance to sit and also talk to stars like you. For the benefit of our viewers and your fans, can you sing a bit from the song Ride It?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do a little bit like this. Ride it, we're all alone. Ride it, just lose control. Ride it, come touch my soul. Ride it, baby, let me feel you. Ride it, turn around, stand low. Ride it, from head to toe. Ride it, come touch my soul. Ride it, baby, let me feel you.
I was
Thank you.
nearly tempted to be your backup singer, but my vocals will not allow. Ladies and gentlemen, R&B superstar Jay Sean, thank you for this and for talking to WION, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition. We are taking a break at this point. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned to WION World as well.
France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term?
Et donc, est-ce que...
Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. WION continuous coverage.
India's neighborhood on the boil. Pakistan and Sri Lanka in turmoil. Pakistan gets a new prime minister after no trust vote. Sri Lanka prime minister stares at a no trust vote.
For the Rajapaksas, these decisions could spell the end of their regime.
And in an act of protest have come together in unity.
Now all eyes would be on this building.
WION tracks the biggest stories from South Asia. Imran takes his fight to the streets. Rajapaksas reach out to protesters in vain. Every detail, all updates, only on WION. It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time. Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
Hub spirals. Shanghai's COVID death toll rises to 17. Patrick Falk reports from the ground. And in India, the national capital, New Delhi, brings back the mask mandate. 21 days after removing it as COVID infections surge. WION Siddhant Sibal gets you the latest. Also on the show, anger boils over the protesters' death in Sri Lanka. WION's correspondent Dasuni Athora gets you the latest from Colombo. And then on to France, where Ross Cullen brings you the latest on Macron Le Pen's strategy as they get set for a televised debate today. And is a 4-day work week practical or impractical? We get you a report. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma and here are the top stories that we're tracking as of now. Shanghai's COVID death toll rises to 17 after 7 new deaths were reported on Tuesday. But authorities in China's financial hub eased their lockdown rules despite the rising death toll. India's national capital, New Delhi, brings back its mask mandates as the city witnesses a surge in coronavirus cases and a positivity rate as well. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to visit India tomorrow as he faces the Partygate scandal and heat back home for breaching coronavirus rules with illegal gatherings during lockdown. A UK court issues a formal order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States to face trial. The decision now rests with UK Interior Minister, but Assange can still appeal. And French President Emmanuel Macron and far-right's Marine Le Pen to go head-to-head in a Crunch TV debate in a few hours from now, as opinion polls show Macron widening his lead ahead of Sunday's runoff.
Sera dirigé par une femme, ce sera ou moi.
And Patrick is a... Authorities in the Chinese city of Shanghai are finding it hard to contain their latest virus flare-up that has pushed the city into a panic mode. With the daily rise in COVID cases and virus-related deaths, Shanghai is currently witnessing one of the worst outbreaks since the start of the pandemic. The Chinese financial hub has added another 7 fatalities to its tally, taking the total death toll to 17. The 7 deaths were cases with underlying health ailments. The highly contagious Omicron subvariant has fueled this recent virus wave in the region. Yesterday also, Shanghai reported 7 deaths, a rise from 3 fatalities reported a day earlier. The city has reported an additional 18,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. More than 400,000 infections have been reported in Shanghai since March, with the city reporting its first COVID deaths amid this latest lockdown on Monday. However, despite the rise in COVID deaths, Shanghai authorities have now decided to ease their lockdown measures. Some factories have resumed operations, and a total of 12 million residents who were previously barred from leaving their homes have been given permission to venture outdoors. From a targeted lockdown to mass testing, Shanghai did impose some of the harshest COVID regulations since the start of the pandemic. Shanghai's COVID measures, which reflect China's strict zero-COVID approach, have pushed its 25 million residents into a state of uncertainty. Residents have started to voice their anger on social media over food shortages and a lack of access to non-COVID medical care. It has also taken a heavy toll on the region's economy, with experts saying that these persistent COVID curbs will put immense pressure on the Chinese economy, which is now getting impacted by the disruption of supply chains across sectors. Now, for more updates on the situation in China, our correspondent Patrick Falk has sent us the latest in this next report coming from Beijing. Take a look.
There does seem to be some improvement in the situation in Shanghai. Authorities previously said that they were targeting Wednesday as a turnaround point and that they'd hoped to reach zero transmission within the community. They haven't managed to do that citywide, but authorities say that they have achieved that in 2 districts, and so a further 4 million people were allowed outside of their homes for the first time in days, weeks for some, bringing to 12 million the total amount of people that have been let outside of their homes. They won't all be allowed outside of their compounds, and they're prohibited from gathering for now, but no doubt they'll still be breathing a slight sigh of relief after what they've gone through over the past few weeks.
Let's now shift our focus to India. Citizens in the Indian national capital, New Delhi, were just getting adjusted to normal life. The authorities removed mask mandates for public spaces. Offices began operating in full capacity. Children returned to school, some even for the first time. Gyms, movie theatres were functioning as they did before the pandemic. But did the authorities make the shift to a pre-pandemic way of life too soon? 21 days after mask mandates were removed in Delhi, they are now brought back. The Delhi Disaster Management Authority has also imposed a fine of 500 rupees for any kind of violation of masks. Though schools for now will not be shut, the DDMA will issue separate standard operating procedures or SOPs in consultation with the experts. New Delhi has been witnessing a surge in COVID cases and positivity rate. Experts say that masks need to be enforced strictly. Over the past week, Delhi has seen a threefold rise in cases compared to 200 daily cases a week. New Delhi is now reporting 500 to 600 new infections every day. On April 11th, the positivity rate was 2.7. It touched 7.7 on 18th of April, and on Tuesday, Delhi reported 632 new cases at a positivity rate of 4.42%. Delhi's neighbouring states, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana, have also imposed mask restrictions in selected districts neighbouring the national capital, with a fine on violating those rules. Experts say the science behind masks is clear and there for all of us to see. There is robust scientific evidence to prove that using masks provides the first line of defense against infection, and along with immunization through a vaccine, it could also help a country ride out any kind of fresh wave. Usually, when all restrictions go away, social mixing increases and immunity wanes. Well-fitted masks will reduce potential transmission. A Lancet study says that wearing face masks in public places and on public transportation modes weeks after the vaccine threshold is reached could save lives and reduce hospitalization. So with mask mandates back in New Delhi as COVID infections surge, will India's capital witness a return of other stricter restrictions as well? That is what we'll try and answer. And to answer this question, joining us now is our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, who is joining us live from the Indian capital, New Delhi. Siddhant, thanks for joining us. Now, as we understand, mask mandates are back. There is a fine for any kind of mask violation nearly 20 days, 21 days after they were removed. What does this say about mask wearing, and are more restrictions going to follow in the Indian capital?
Well, as of now, there are no indications by the authorities here in the Indian national capital over new restrictions. In fact, the schools remain open because we know that with schools opening, the students back in school, there is worry over COVID cases there. And of course, we know in Delhi suburbs, there have been noticeable increase in number of students, number of kids, in fact, getting COVID. But largely today is an important day in terms of masks back in the national capital. The fines being imposed if you're not found wearing masks in public places. But largely the Delhi Chief Minister has been taking meetings. In fact, he has directed officials to make sure that there is the following of the protocols, the COVID protocols. But largely this is because of the increase in number of cases. In fact, from April 13 to April 18, there has been threefold increase in number of cases in the national capital. And that's right. Also seen in large parts of the country as well. In fact, the health secretary has written a letter to his counterparts in UP, in Maharashtra, other places as well, to make sure that there is compliance when it comes to COVID protocols.
Right, absolutely. Siddhant, just very quickly, as you just pointed out, kids are heading back to school, and I think that is a primary concern for parents right now. Kids are largely unvaccinated. It's very difficult for them to wear masks when they're in classrooms, especially in the Delhi heat. So what can be said on that front? Is there a possible likelihood at this point that schools will shut down should cases continue to surge?
Well, yes, parents are very, very worried regarding their kids going to school, and of course COVID numbers increasing. But when it comes to the government, the authorities here, they have made it clear that school will not be closed as of now. We also know that the schools have opened after a gap of months. In fact, 2 years because of the COVID pandemic. Schools were closed, and this was impacting the education of many children. So opening of the school was seen as a positive development for many parents, but now they are worried over the number of COVID cases, and their kids might be infected because of the classrooms and of course closed spaces. So schools can be seen following COVID protocols very soon. There can be circulars inside schools regarding the following of COVID protocols.
Right, absolutely. Siddhant, thanks so much for all those updates, and we at WION would urge all our users to exercise precaution and put on that mask to protect yourself and your loved ones. Now let's move on to the recent updates coming from Sri Lanka, where resentment against economic austerity is escalating. The common man is now on the streets across the South Asian country, voicing anger against the government's mishandling of the economy. One of the protest sites has now become the centre of the agitation, after Sri Lankan police fired live ammunition, killing one person. Peaceful protests have been taking place since last month across the island nation of 22 million people. But disturbances erupted in central Sri Lanka's Rambukana during the demonstrations against acute oil shortages as well as high fuel prices. A key railway line was blocked by a group of protesters for hours. The Sri Lankan police reportedly asked protesters to move away, but then it opened fire, killing one man and wounding 29 others, including 11 cops. It's important to note that this is the first killing of a protester in weeks of anti-government protests, a day after the killing of an anti-government protester. The police kept up a curfew in central Sri Lanka. The government promised investigations into the allegations that the police had used excessive force to disperse the crowds. And hours after the incident, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa tried to assuage the fury. He put out a tweet urging the Sri Lankan police to carry out an impartial probe. The opposition that plans to bring a no-confidence motion against the government is also set to corner the Rajapaksa government over the killing. The killing has triggered international condemnation. The Sri Lankan Human Rights Commission has now called for a probe into the incident. Foreign diplomats also condemned the violence. Top Colombo-based envoys, including those from the US, Britain and Canada, expressed their concern over the police shooting. Ambassadors called for restraint from all sides, while the US ambassador, Julie Chung, said that the people's right to peaceful protest must be upheld. While the British High Commissioner Sarah Hulton added that an independent and transparent investigation is essential, and her Canadian counterpart, David McKinnon, said that those instigating violence must be held accountable. Former Sri Lankan cricketers have also raised their voice against the killing. Criticising the Sri Lankan government, Mahela Jayawardene expressed his anger against the police who opened fire, saying that there can be no excuse to shoot at the protesters, while Kumara Sangakkara called it a shameful instance of brutality. Across the country, there were protests against a sharp rise in fuel prices and the shortage of diesel and petrol. In the capital, Colombo, a large crowd has been camped outside the president's seafront office since April 9th. They are demanding that the leader should step down. With regular blackouts, severe shortages of fuel and a record inflation, the misery faced by the Sri Lankans is hard enough. Trade unions have called a general strike today to protest the rising living costs. Public transport fares are set to rise by 35% after diesel was raised by nearly 65% the day before. The prices for bread have gone up nearly 30%. Our correspondent Dasuni Athora is on the ground tracking the situation in Colombo. She has now sent us this report. Take a look.
While Sri Lanka is still reeling from what transpired last night in Rambukana, where police opened fire on unarmed civilians that ultimately resulted in the death of one individual, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today assured that a just and impartial inquiry will be carried out into the incident. However, much of the nation is still in shock and in anger as to why the police of Sri Lanka opened fire on unarmed civilians that ultimately resulted in the death of one citizen. That's not all. Over on in the parliament today, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa made a revelation that the Speaker of Parliament on a prior occasion had mentioned that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is in fact ready to resign, given that all party leaders of the opposition are unanimous in their decision requesting for the president to step down. However, hours later, the Speaker in Parliament once again vehemently denied these claims, for which the opposition leader called the Speaker nothing but a liar. Stay with WION as we bring you the very latest from here in Sri Lanka, of Sri Lanka's worsening economic crisis. Reporting from Colombo, from the Go village, I'm Dasumi Atalda.
On to WION's coverage of the French presidential election. With just 4 days left for the runoff, the battle for who will lead France is heating up. In the latest, senior political allies have warned that the incumbent president Emmanuel Macron is not certain to win, despite polls indicating his lead over his far-right challenger Marine Le Pen. As of now, Macron's projected lead for Sunday's decisive second-round vote, with 3 polls for the second-round runoff, places Macron at the highest level with an average score of 55.83%, further suggesting that the gap has widened from 8 to 12 points since Friday. However, despite this, French Prime Minister Jean Castex has asserted that it is still too early to claim victory. In a statement on France Interradio, he said that the game is not done and dusted yet, further emphasizing on how Parisians in particular need to be convinced. They need to be convinced with how Macron's programs are best for France as of now. And echoing similar concerns, Castex's immediate predecessor, Edouard Philippe, also said that nothing should be taken for granted, hinting at a possible low turnout during Sunday's presidential runoff. Not only this, the incumbent president Emmanuel Macron has also himself made it clear that he does not consider the election already won. But before Sunday's runoff, Macron and Le Pen will face off in a televised debate that is scheduled to take place in a few hours from now and will determine the future of France. And for more updates on this, our correspondent Ross Cullen has sent us this report from Paris. Take a look.
Yeah, the consensus is that Emmanuel Macron does have a lead in these polls heading into the second round, that crucial presidential runoff vote, which is going to take place on Sunday, 2 weeks after the first round, in which he was also leading the polls. That first round saw Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron emerge as the two candidates who would go through to this final runoff race. And as is traditional, in the 2 week period between the first and second round, there is a TV debate, live head-to-head, which will be taking place at 9 p.m. local time here in France, where we will see Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, just as they did in 2017, go face-to-face to try to take apart each other's argument, to try to break down their own policies, promote their own project, their own vision, while also trying to illustrate to the French people that their opponents' policies are not fit for France.
Let's talk shop now. The idea of a 4-day week sounds great, right? A 3-day weekend, more time to pursue our hobbies, plan a short getaway and complete all those tasks. Iceland, Sweden, Japan, Scotland, they're all experimenting with a shorter work week. They say it boosts employee well-being and productivity. Think again. Are we cramming the same amount of work in a shorter period of time, and will this lead to more stress and fatigue for us in the long run? Let's explore. God, it's Friday. Hang on, not today. We're just saying out loud the words which we look forward to all week long. We plan our weekends, packing them up to the brim, socializing with friends and family, wrapping up those chores, squeezing in some essential grocery shopping, planning our meals and workouts for the upcoming week. And as Sunday wraps up, the manic Monday dread sets in. We've all been through it, don't lie, living from weekend to weekend. But what if your weekend was longer? What if you had more time to unwind? Welcome to a 4-day week. A working model being sampled across the world with a mixed bag of responses. Spain has tried it, agreeing to a 32-hour work week without affecting employee salaries. Iceland ran the world's largest trial of a shorter working week from 2015 to 2019, and everyone was seemingly happier, healthier, and more productive, all this according to a study. Scotland also joined the club, encouraging the perfect work-life balance. All this without any loss of pay. Ireland is also trying out the same. 2 years ago, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern also called for more flexible working hours. Several companies in Japan are also joining the 4-week bandwagon, trying to break away from a toxic workaholic culture. The US state of California could also move to shorten the work week for employees of large companies. There are more hoping to join this list soon. Naturally, a compressed work schedule is not without its advantages. There are claims of increased productivity, there is more time to spend with family, decreased overhead costs, and of course, money saved in daily commuting. But there is a price to pay. Imagine working for longer hours every week. You'll still have the same deadlines and tasks to accomplish, the same school schedules for kids, workouts, nutrition planning, grocery shopping, and then a longer work day. Not on paper perhaps, but you will be cramming in more work in the same time or more, just to have that elusive longer weekend. This is bound to have an impact on your health. See the math here. You work 5 8-hour shifts or 4 10-hour shifts. This can lead to fatigue and stress that may accumulate over time. So what's the best choice? Well, it's different for everyone. We need flexible working options. The pandemic has taught us that. Simply deleting a day from our work week will not help. A 4-day work week is great as a metaphor for flexibility. But companies need to do more, just as employees need to find that perfect balance. Because a 3-day weekend is not worth years of health issues in the long run. Look at the big picture always. Bureau Report, WION World is One. Time now for a quick break on WION World is One. Don't go too far. Coming up next is all the action from the world of sports and WION Sports.
It's code red for humanity.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
Looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
And hopping to a Taliban petrol now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent here.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. See, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One with me, Priyanka Sharma. If you were a headphone-wearing music addict who kept a keen note of everything happening on the radio in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, chances are you would have found yourself dancing to the tracks of Jay Sean. The British-Asian crossover star toured India recently, and just minutes before his Mumbai concert, my colleague Eric Najoka had an exclusive chat with him. The hitmaker spoke about his love for India and his inner calling. Listen in.
We at WION are excited to have the Indian origin British artist who is joining us from Mumbai. Jay Sean, hello and welcome to WION World is One. Thank you for this opportunity. How have you been?
Of course, thank you for having me, guys. Now, I've been incredible. I have had the most wonderful tour of India because, especially bearing in mind, over the pandemic, we weren't able to tour as artists. That was so difficult for us. And I usually come to India at least every year. So it's been really nice for me to be back.
You had shows in New Delhi, Bengaluru, and now you have one in Mumbai. How has the response been so far?
I mean, honestly, absolutely electrifying. We have very different shows depending on what part of the world I'm performing in. So in Delhi, of course, it's a very heavy Punjabi roots demographic. So it allows me to be able to drop certain songs that will really, really react well in that audience that I don't necessarily get to perform in other parts of the world. So that was super fun. And then yesterday in Bangalore, we almost got rained out because we had a outdoor venue. It was like almost like an amphitheater, except it started pouring down with rain. But the show went on and it was absolutely wonderful.
Many people may not know this, but your fans do. You are a self-confessed science geek. How did you transform from studying medicine and being a science-oriented person to being a musician?
You know, I think we all have a few things that we are into, hobbies, aside from our profession. I have friends who are brain surgeons who also love DJing, or who love to go and play golf, or wish they were amateur tennis players. So we all have these things that we enjoy doing, and then the other thing that ends up as our work. And sometimes both overlap. And that's a beautiful thing when you love what you do too. Now, believe it or not, I did love medicine, and I still do, and I'm still very sort of into science and the brain and the body, and that will never really leave me. But the music, you know, it was always meant for me.
When did you decide that I just want to sing?
You know, it was more than just singing for me. Yes, I, of course, enjoy the process of singing. Yes, I enjoy writing songs. And yes, I enjoy performing them. But what I wanted to do was to change the way that South Asian people, such as myself, were portrayed in society. Because when I was a kid, and I listened to R&B music and I listened to hip hop, there wasn't anybody who looked like me on TV. There was no brown boy doing mainstream music. And I thought to myself, well, that needs to change, doesn't it? Look how many of us there are in this world. We're the second largest demographic on planet Earth. You can't name me one Indian pop star? Are you serious? So I was like, this needs to change. And that to this day has been something that I've always advocated for. I've always wanted more of us in mainstream representation. I've always fought for that. I've always tried to break down the barriers, and that to me is my calling.
Well, we at WION wish you all the very best. Finally, Jay Sean, it's not every day when we get a chance to sit and also talk to stars like you. For the benefit of our viewers and your fans, can you sing a bit from the song Ride It?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do a little bit like this. Ride it, we're all alone, ride it, just lose control, ride it, come touch my soul, ride it, baby let me feel you, ride it, turn around, stand low, ride it, from head to toe, ride it, come touch my soul, ride it, baby let me feel you.
I was nearly tempted to be your backup singer, but my vocals will not allow. Ladies and gentlemen, R&B superstar Jay Sean, thank you for this and for talking to WION, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And now let's move on to this Wednesday edition of WION Sports with me, Priyanka Sharma. We have a packed show for you as usual with action from all over the world. The Royal Challengers Bangalore show their IPL title credentials, while Inter Milan crushed their city rivals AC Milan to reach the Italian Cup final. We have basketball action as well with another night of high drama in the NBA playoffs. But up first, we get you a landmark result from the English Premier League, of course. The most compelling and intriguing rivalry in English football is turning out to be a one-sided no contest. Liverpool have taken over the lead in the Premier League after thrashing Manchester United 4-0. These two giants of English and European football had 131 trophies between them, but just pride wasn't at stake. Liverpool had to win to stay in the title hunt with Manchester City a point ahead, while United had to win to keep pace with Tottenham in the race for the Champions League spots. Liverpool made one of their customary swift starts at Anfield with an incisive pass from their own half, cutting United open with Mohamed Salah laying it up for Luis Diaz to slot home in the 5th minute.
And Manchester United must really be fearing the remainder of this from here. Tough for Lingard to keep it there. Thiago has it back.
The peerless Thiago dictated the pace of the game from the centre of the pitch as wave after wave of Liverpool attacks overwhelmed United, who could barely lay a finger on their arch rivals.
Yes, Matip. Mane, oh, that's glorious. Salah, that's use.
Liverpool's superiority deserved a second goal, and Salah ended an 8-game goalless run by running on to meet a perfectly weighted lob from Sadio Mane and placing it past a hapless David De Gea in the 22nd minute.
Henderson, won by Van Dijk. Mane!
It was Liverpool's fault that they weren't out of sight at the break, and that gave Ralph Rangnick some hope of retrieving the situation as he sent on Jadon Sancho in the second half. United improved marginally and started to ask questions, with Alisson Becker forced into a double save just past the hour mark. But United's brief attempts at a comeback were thwarted minutes later as Liverpool broke quickly through Andrew Robertson, and he fed Luis Diaz, whose pass on the turn was volleyed home by Sadio Mane to put the game to bed.
Effort, because it's first time and the keeper. Clearly, the only way it can be viewed, Peter, is if it was...
Diaz was replaced by Diogo Jota, and the Portuguese ace split United wide open again to release Salah, who dinked it over De Gea in the 85th minute. Salah could have had a hat-trick but was denied the final touch just as he was about to pull the trigger. But it hardly mattered on the night, as the gulf in class between the two teams was there for all to see. The two Liverpool United games this season ended in a 9-0 margin in Liverpool's favour. Liverpool's biggest aggregate win over their arch rivals. The quadruple quest remains alive at United. It's only the inquest.
Shredded by Luis Diaz inside the first 5 minutes. Shredded by Sadio Mane.
I don't think so, to be honest. No, I don't think that they have mentally checked out. It's just a different level. They have better players than we have, if you look at it in total. And this is what was reflected by the result today. So there will be a rebuild for sure, but right now that doesn't help us because we still have another 5 games to play. So that there has to be a rebuild, for me, was clear even when I came in December, and after the first 3 or 4 weeks, for me that was obvious. But right now it doesn't help, and for us it's extremely embarrassing, also as a coaching staff, to have press conferences like the one we have right now. But we just have to admit they are better than us.
Obviously, absolutely outstanding. Yes, Mo scored 2, set up the first. Luis set up Sadio's and get the ball from Mo, and all this kind of Diogo came on, set Mo's second up, all these kind of things, who couldn't have been better, to be honest. And yes, Thiago played a good game. That's but with his quality, with quality always there comes responsibility. So if you are good, you should better play good as well, and that's what he did tonight, really, again. So, from a football point of view, really nothing to moan about. Was a perfect night for us. We don't take these kind of things for granted.
During the match, both Liverpool and Manchester United supporters came together to pay a touching tribute to Cristiano Ronaldo following the death of his newborn son. The entire Anfield held a minute of applause in the 7th minute of the match, which is Ronaldo's shirt number at United. Liverpool fans sang their club's anthem, "You'll Never Walk Alone," while some United fans held up Ronaldo's jersey.
Desperate and Anfield sympathisers. And they're singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" on the back of it for Cristiano Ronaldo.
Players from both teams also wore black armbands as a mark of respect. On Wednesday, Ronaldo's sister Elma took to Instagram to thank the gesture from the Anfield faithful. She wrote, "Thank you for this, Liverpool. We will never forget what you did today."
Stopping to applaud out of sympathy for a Manchester United superstar. This is a sports...
I'm pretty sure I will ask anyway about it. My moment of the game, even when it was very important and a great result, was the 7th minute when our people showed pure class, and the whole stadium together showed pure class in a moment where we... Obviously, everybody knew since yesterday, since I heard first time about it, so many things are much more important in life than football. And obviously, we really feel for Cristiano and his family.
Meanwhile, there is more Premier League action tonight with crucial matches in the title race, the top four race as well as the battle for survival. Champions Manchester City can regain their spot at the summit of the table with a win against Brighton tonight. City come into the game knowing that they have no margin for error, as even a draw could cost them the title. Pep Guardiola's side were not at their best in the defeat to Liverpool in the FA Cup semi-final over the weekend and will need to put in an assured display against an informed Brighton side. Graham Potter's side have pulled off impressive away victories against Arsenal as well as Tottenham over the last couple of weeks.
Lana trying to trick his way through. Big chance for Trossard! And in the 90th minute,
the challenge is the same like last 2 weeks, or last 2-3 weeks. So it's the same. We're going to play every game a final to give opportunity to play another one until the end. We're going to challenge, and at the end we're going to fight. That's for sure until the end. We'll try to play good and get results.
London heavyweights Chelsea and Arsenal face off at Stamford Bridge tonight. The Blues are not in the race for the Premier League title, and their Champions League defence was ended last week by Real Madrid. However, Thomas Tuchel's side can end the season with silverware after sealing their place in the FA Cup final against Liverpool over the weekend. Their place in the top four is more or less assured, and they will come up against an Arsenal side who have lost their last 3 league games. Another slip-up for the Gunners could prove to be fatal to their quest for Champions League football.
Astonishing defeat for Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. Arsenal's.
It's very difficult because at this club it's only about winning, and there were 3 very different games, but with the same outcome, and we are extremely unsatisfied with that. We know that we are hurting, but at the same time we know how we lost them, and what we merit in those games, it doesn't reflect the amount of points that we have taken, but we have to understand why that happened as well. But there is nothing to look back. Everything is still to play for. Our ambition is still intact, our desire is still intact, and we know the challenge ahead, and we're going to go for it.
And finally, Everton continue their pursuit for Premier League survival against Leicester City at Goodison Park. Frank Lampard's Everton enjoyed the rare luxury of a weekend off and got a crucial win over Manchester United in their last match. Another victory would put them 6 points clear of the drop zone. Brendan Rodgers' Leicester have nothing to play for in the league, but will now look to get a positive result ahead of the Europa Conference League semi-final against AS Roma.
All right, okay.
And over in Italy, the blue half of the city of Milan went to sleep happy on Tuesday as Inter beat AC Milan 3-0 in Coppa Italia semi-final second leg to progress to the final, where they will now face either reigning champions Juventus or Fiorentina. There was a passionate Let's move on now. The world's oldest and most prestigious tennis tournament, Wimbledon, is now set to completely ban Russian and Belarusian players following the invasion of Ukraine. The grass court tournament will be the first to suspend players from the countries. Currently, they are allowed to play on the ATP and WTA tours as neutral athletes. And they have been allowed to put their names on the entry list for the next month's French Open. The move will mean that current men's world number 2, Daniil Medvedev of Russia, will not compete at Wimbledon. While women's Belarusian stars Arina Sabalenka and 2-time Grand Slam champion Victoria Azarenka will also be affected. The Wimbledon organisers consulted the government in April on whether to allow players from the 2 countries to compete, and an official announcement from the All England Tennis Club confirming the decision is expected any time now. Russia has already responded to the reported ban and termed it unacceptable. A Kremlin spokesperson has said that a blanket ban on the country would hurt the tournament, given the country's prowess in the sport. The spokesperson added, and I quote, "To make sports people hostages of political intrigue is unacceptable." And let's now get you some on-court action from Barcelona and Belgrade. The 2020 US Open champion Dominic Thiem failed to make a winning return to the ATP Tour at the Serbia Open. The former world number 3 lost to Australian John Millman in what was his first tour match since June of 2021. The Austrian was naturally a bit rusty but was able to take the match to 3 sets. Thiem, who has dropped to world number 54 in the rankings, was broken in the 10th game of the decider as Millman completed a 6-3, 3-6, 6-4 triumph in 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Game, set match, Millman. 2-0.
And over in Barcelona, 8th seed Pablo Carreño Busta booked his place in the last 16 with a win over fellow Spaniard Bernabe Zapata Miralles. Olympic bronze medalist Busta was not at his best but was still able to comfortably beat the world number 119, 6-3, 6-3. He will now face 11th seed Lorenzo Sonego for a place in the quarterfinals. Second seed Casper Ruud began his Barcelona Open campaign with a straight sets win over American Brandon Nakashima. World number 7 Ruud has already won a title on clay this season in Argentina and looked in cruise control on Tuesday. Ruud broke the world number 81 4 times and needed less than 90 minutes to wrap up a 6-3, 6-2 victory. The Norwegian will be looking to bounce back after a disappointing Monte Carlo Masters last week. Top seed Stefano Tsitsipas will begin his Barcelona Open campaign later today. And time now for some action from the NBA playoffs. The New Orleans Pelicans upset the top-seeded Phoenix Suns 125 to 114-point win to level their first-round series at 1-1. Phoenix Suns were by far the best team in the regular season and finished with the franchise record 64 wins. They eased to a win in Game 1 of the series, but it was a completely different story last night. Brandon Ingram was the star of the show, registering a game-high 37 points as well as 11 rebounds and 9 assists. Suns all-star guard Devin Booker was spectacular in the first half with 31 points but was forced to leave the court with a hamstring injury in the third quarter. Last year's runners-up are unsure if he will be available for Game 3, and his absence could be a huge blow to their title hopes.
The transition defense, that was probably, for us, the worst we've ever looked in transition since I've been here. And for that to happen in a playoff game was a bit unsettling for everybody. But our guys have to understand that this team is going to play hard every possession. And we saw it in the third quarter. We missed a shot, they were taken off, and that was a bit deflating.
And Miami Heat star Jimmy Butler scored a playoff career-high 45 points to guide his team to a 2-0 lead against the Atlanta Hawks. Butler scored 11 of his 12 free throws and was simply the best player. On the court, as 2020 finalists, Miami completed a 115 to 105-point win. Eastern Conference top seeds Miami will now travel to Atlanta for Game 3 on Friday night.
Look, I'm a huge fan of the Backstreet Boys, and I just love to compete at anything. But anything to take my mind away from basketball for a little bit is always good. It's good for everybody. But that's just what I do on game days. It's music, drink my coffee, and compete with my guys.
The Memphis Grizzlies leveled their series against the Minnesota Timberwolves with a comprehensive victory. The Grizzlies ended the regular season with the second-best record in the league and bounced back from their defeat in Game 1. All-star Ja Morant led the way with 23 points, 10 assists and 9 rebounds. Memphis sealed a 124 to 96-point win, their biggest margin of victory in the playoff history. On to cricket now. Royal Challengers Bangalore produced an all-round performance as they defeated the Lucknow Super Giants by 18 runs in the Indian Premier League to rise to the second spot in the points table. Playing against his former team, Lucknow Super Giants skipper KL Rahul won the toss and asked the Royal Challengers Bangalore to bat first. It was far from an ideal start for Bangalore as Dushmantha Chamira struck twice in the first over to remove Drought and Virat Kohli in consecutive balls. Kohli has struggled this season, scoring just 119 runs in 7 games at an average of 19.83. The innings needed some calm, and Bangalore skipper Faf du Plessis provided that by playing some sensible cricket. He had cruised along to 43 from 38 balls with a handful of boundaries, but stepped on the pedal after that smashing 53 from the next 26. As RCB transformed a faltering scoreline of 62 for 4 into a competitive target of 182. Lucknow started their innings strong, but their progress was halted with the fall of wickets at regular intervals. KL Rahul couldn't back up his century as he fell for 30. Deepak Hooda and Krunal Pandya's 36-run partnership kept Lucknow in the contest, but with the required rate creeping over 11, Lucknow had to take risks, and that eventually cost them. They needed 72 runs in the last 6 overs, and even though Ayush Badoni and Marcus Stoinis delivered some big hits, 2 superb overs from Josh Hazlewood dashed Lucknow's hopes as Lucknow's innings ended on 163 for 8.
Oh, look, we're ticking along pretty nicely as a team at the moment. I mean, Anuj and Faf have had 3 50-run partnerships that have been important for us. We've also had to bat in some pretty challenging conditions at times when we've lost the toss and we've struggled to get underway. So, those 50-run partnerships were important. They weren't quick, but they sort of set the foundation. So, look, once again, Faf came good today and obviously was able to take some pressure off when we'd lost early wickets, and Anuj had done that, in previous games. So, we're ticking along nicely, but we'll always look to continue to try and strive to improve. Whether that's making a change or not, I mean, that's something that we'll look to discuss.
And with that, that's it on this edition of WION Sports. With me, Priyanka Sharma, we will be back tomorrow with another chapter of the intriguing Premier League title race, as well as the result of Novak Djokovic's opener in Belgrade. Stay tuned to WION World is One. Coming up next is WION's live broadcast from the United States with Simon Marks.
From our studios live in New York City, I'm Susan Tehrani, and this is WION World is One.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban-led call now
non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensified.
There are many other...
Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast. I'm Simon Marks in Washington, D.C. and these are the headlines of this Wednesday. A commander of Ukrainian forces holding out at a steel works in the besieged port city of Mariupol issues a desperate plea for help, saying his Marines are facing their last days, if not hours. President Joe Biden will convene top U.S. military leaders in an annual White House gathering today that takes on special significance as the war in Ukraine enters a risky new phase. The United States plans to unveil more lethal aid for the country. Thousands of people across Sri Lanka took to the streets a day after police opened fire on demonstrators, killing one person and reigniting widespread protests amid the country's worst economic crisis for decades. A security pact between the Solomon Islands and China will not undermine peace, insisted the Prime Minister of the Pacific Island nation in an address to Parliament that was aimed at easing the concerns of the US and its allies. And Shanghai further eases its weeks-long COVID-19 lockdown despite mounting deaths and tens of thousands of new cases. Residents are venting online about uneven enforcement. President Joe Biden will host top US military leaders today at the White House. This annual gathering is taking on special significance as the war in Ukraine enters a risky new phase. At a time when the United States plans more military aid, a variety of topics will be on the table for discussions by senior military leaders and members of the President's National Security Council. The event includes a formal West Wing meeting, as well as a dinner in the President's residence tonight. Spouses of the military leaders will be there for that. While the annual military policy meeting rarely makes headlines, weighty issues are on the agenda this year, and they're topped by the crisis in Ukraine, with growing concerns that a grinding conflict there could imperil European security for years to come. Russia says the war has entered a new stage. The Kremlin says Russian forces are methodically seeking to liberate the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, including the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. Western allies anticipate Russia's campaign could last many months. The United States is expected to announce another military aid package for Ukraine in coming days. It could match the $800 million pledged only last week. US forces are not fighting in Ukraine, but are indirectly engaged, arming, training and financing Kyiv's forces. Last month, President Biden asked Congress for record peacetime spending on the military for the upcoming fiscal year, a budget of $770 billion. The meeting today comes amid questions about the future of NATO forces in Europe, including whether to install a permanent presence on the defence alliance's eastern border with Russia.
Yes. You all have devoted your lives.
The democracies united in our opposition.
Let's go live now to WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani. She joins me now from New York. Susan, good to see you again today. This meeting at the White House today, is this a reflection of the fact that the Biden administration is now essentially accepting that the situation in Ukraine is going to become a long-term grinding conflict that could certainly overshadow the rest of President Biden, what President Biden hopes is just his first term in office?
Right, definitely an issue that the Biden administration has been signaling. President Biden really did mention that a few weeks ago. He said that this war may be a long war. We've heard European officials also make that claim and assessment as well. What's interesting is that Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, continues to insist that this war would be over had the United States and other NATO member states assisted him properly with the proper weapons and perhaps taken more preemptive measures against Russia with sanctions and whatnot, and we wouldn't be in the situation that we are right now. So the question that many are asking right now is the possible prolonged status of this war the cause of not having adequate action on the part of the United States in the first place, and how long is it going to take, and whether or not there would be adequate support for that moving forward.
So we're expecting this announcement of perhaps another $800 million in weapons shipments to Ukraine, and certainly the president's got more money available to him to carry on digging deep in that regard in the weeks ahead. But how difficult is it going to be for President Biden to keep walking this line that he's not putting any American troops into Ukraine, particularly in a week in which we have learnt that at least some retired US military figures have volunteered to sign up with the Ukrainian International Brigade, are supporting Ukrainian forces on the ground in Kiev and in other locations across the country. I mean, that could very easily be misinterpreted by the Kremlin if the Kremlin so chose, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, what's alarming is that
How you doing?
Doing good, sir. How are you?
I like the experience, training.
Yes. You all have devoted your lives.
Keep the democracies united in our opposition.
Well, I think we lost Susan there for a second. We were just about to ask her. I think she may be back with us again. Let me just try that question one more time. Susan, we were talking about how complicated it's going to be for President Biden to walk the line of insisting that there are no American boots on the ground, when we do know that there are at least some retired US military figures who have now signed up for that international brigade that President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has formed.
You know, what's interesting about that is that there hasn't been any kind of sort of condemnation, or at least any statement officially coming out from the U.S. government to sort of prevent U.S. citizens from joining that international brigade that's inside of Ukraine. Of course, these are private citizens. They can do what they can. But one notable person that has recently joined in the past few days is an MSNBC commentator, a media commentator who was a former naval intelligence officer named Malcolm Nance. So he appeared in a suit and tie on television the night before, and then the day after, he was seen in Ukraine joining the military forces holding a Kalashnikov. And then again, in another segment, he was sitting and analyzing the situation on the ground in Ukraine. So, you know, first of all, this brings into question not only the ethics of journalism on the one hand, what message this is trying to send to the American public on the other, whether or not you know, it's safe to go over there and join this recruitment International Legion of Defense. And also, I really found this, and I think it's very important to note about how sensitive and delicate it is for Americans to go and join, as you mentioned, and how this could get out of hand and be misused by the Russians. According to the Ukrainian government, units of the international fighters formally do fall under Ukraine's regular armed forces and report to Ukrainian commanders. So they have been open that international fighters, including Americans, can go and join this international brigade. However, Russia has announced that it would consider foreigners fighting in Ukraine to be mercenaries. That means that, according to Russian officials, if they are captured, it's not clear whether or not they would be entitled to prisoner of war status and how they would be treated. So their status in Russia when they're captured would be unidentifiable, and then that would put the war into a whole new dimension, and relations between the country of origin of these mercenaries and Russia in a very difficult state. So yes, it's a very complicated situation when individuals go, and it will be very hard to see how the administration from a governmental standpoint can distance itself if and when something goes awry in situations like this.
Missing in action, ethics in US network news. Very much in action for us today in New York City. WION's Susan Tehrani. Susan, thanks very much indeed for that. Russia has once again issued an ultimatum to Ukrainian forces in the besieged Black Sea port of Mariupol to lay down their arms and surrender. But Ukrainian officials this week have been absolutely insistent that their fight for the city is not over yet. Here's the latest.
Russia was intensifying its attack on Ukraine's east on Tuesday as it sought a decisive victory in Mariupol, prompting Western governments to pledge more arms and sanctions. Thousands of Russian troops backed by artillery and rocket barrages were advancing in what Ukrainian officials called the Battle of the Donbass. Russia bombarded the Azovstal steel plant, the main remaining stronghold in Mariupol, with bunker-buster bombs, a Ukrainian presidential advisor said late on Tuesday, after an ultimatum by Russia for Ukrainian troops to lay down their weapons had lapsed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Moscow for blocking any attempts to organize humanitarian corridors and save people.
The Russian army will forever inscribe itself in world history as perhaps the most barbaric and inhuman army in the world, deliberately killing civilians, destroying residential quarters and civilian infrastructure, and using all kinds of weapons, including those prohibited by international conventions, is already the brand signature of the Russian army.
The United States, Canada, Britain, France, and Germany on Tuesday pledged more support to Ukraine, including sending heavy artillery and ammunition. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby.
I would just say, without getting into what other nations are providing, that they have received additional platforms and parts to be able to increase their fleet size, their aircraft fleet size. I think I'd leave it at that.
In Mariupol, a humanitarian catastrophe has unfolded. Tens of thousands of residents have been trapped with no access to food or water, and bodies litter the streets. Ukraine believes more than 20,000 civilians have died there. Russia has denied targeting civilians in its invasion of Ukraine and says without evidence that signs of atrocities were staged. Video released by Ukraine's Azov battalion purported to show people living in the underground network beneath the steel plant, where they say hundreds of women, children, and elderly civilians are sheltering with diminishing supplies.
We lost our home. We lost our livelihood. We want to live a normal, peaceful life. We want to get out of here. There are lots of children in here. They're hungry. Get us out of here, we beg you. We've already cried out all the tears we have. We can't cry anymore.
Reuters could not independently verify where or when the video was shot. Shells and rockets also hit Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, officials said, wrecking apartment blocks and other buildings. Officials said 4 people were killed and 14 wounded. Reuters journalists saw the bodies of 3 people, apparently killed by shrapnel, lying on the pavement.
Dans mes bras, venez dans mes bras. Ces violences, ces incestes. Le soir revenir dans l'Europe. Personne jamais ne relève leur incohérence.
Now, the battle for who will lead France is heating up. On one side, incumbent President Emmanuel Macron. On the other, far-right leader Marine Le Pen. This Sunday, France decides which of the two of them will lead the country. But before that, the two leaders will face off in a televised debate tonight. Both Macron and Le Pen have different visions for the future of the country, and today's debate will give them a make-or-break chance to try and convert voters. Currently, opinion polls favour Macron. He has consolidated his lead over Le Pen as both leaders try to woo voters ahead of the runoff. Estimates suggest that Macron can expect to receive between 54 and 56% of the votes. But that is a much smaller win than 5 years ago when the two politicians first faced off for the presidency. Back in 2017, Emmanuel Macron beat Marine Le Pen comfortably, taking 66% of the vote. Analysts also say that a Le Pen victory cannot be ruled out, even though it is less likely. So today, the two candidates will face off in a 2.5-hour TV encounter. Le Pen's poor performance in the 2017 TV debate played a major role in her defeat. This time round, her aides say she is better prepared and more focused. Neither candidate has sufficient die-hard supporters to take them to power, so the key is to convince voters that the other candidate is worse. Left-wing voters who backed a third candidate in the first round of the election will be absolutely crucial in determining the outcome of this election. Macron's style and policies have upset many of them, but polls show they are breaking more in his favour than in Le Pen's. Whoever wins on Sunday is likely to secure victory with a small majority. If Macron wins, he will face a difficult second term with little to no grace period and many voters already protesting against his policies. If Le Pen pulls off a shock victory, France will undergo radical change. Its domestic and international policies would change substantially. Some analysts even fear that street protests could begin. Either way, the winner's first challenge will be to win parliamentary elections that are coming up this June. But this presidential election is critical, not only for France but also for Europe. Macron is a pro-European centrist. Le Pen is an anti-immigration Eurosceptic. WION will continue to track the French presidential elections, bringing you comprehensive coverage of who will run the European Union's second largest economy for the next 5 years. And to get you the very latest, here's an update from WION's correspondent in the French capital, Ross Cullen.
Yeah, the consensus is that Emmanuel Macron does have a lead in these polls heading into the second round, that crucial presidential runoff vote, which is going to take place on Sunday, 2 weeks after the first round, in which he was also leading the polls. That first round saw Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron emerge as the two candidates who would go through to this final runoff race. And as is traditional, in the 2-week period between the first and second round, there is a TV debate, live head-to-head, which will be taking place at 9 p.m. local time here in France, where we will see Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, just as they did in 2017, go face-to-face to try to take apart each other's argument, to try to break down their own policies, promote their own project, their own vision, while also trying to illustrate to the French people that their opponents' policies are not fit for France.
The people of East Africa are facing a severe drought. Scarce rainfall and high temperatures have worsened their situation, but hunger and malnutrition are widespread and there is little hope of relief.
Delayed rains in the Horn of Africa has left it vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. East African countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia and the Sudan make up the continent's horn-shaped peninsula. More than 20 million people in the region are preparing for the most severe drought since 1981. The UN authorities recorded high temperatures and scarce rainfall for the last 2 months. The region is heavily dependent on agriculture. Extreme weather conditions have put the entire population at risk of starvation. The UN's World Food Programme estimates that about 14 million in the region are starving. They warn that the worsening of drought can affect more population.
After 3 failed rainy seasons, it's estimated that the region is the driest it has been in 40 years. We're now waiting for the current rainy season to arrive. It's late and we're very concerned of what the implications will be if it is below average. The estimates suggest that the numbers affected could skyrocket to 20 million people. We need the ability to respond. We need the rain.
Approximately 1.4 million children under 5 in the Horn of Africa are vulnerable to acute malnutrition.
This drought is the worst drought that we have seen for the last 20 years. It affected the whole community, especially children, especially the under 5 children. So we are getting here a lot of malnourished children, more than the children that we have seen 6 months ago. The number of admissions have increased from 5 patients per day to 15 patients per day.
East Africa endured a harrowing drought in 2017 as well. Rapid action by the community helped avert a famine in Somalia then. Similar action is required now. The UN agencies have asked for $473 million over the next 6 months to deal with the present crisis. The region is already bleeding with issues of poverty and locust invasion, and an acute drought will only worsen the condition. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And scorching heat is not troubling humans alone. Even wildlife is plagued by soaring temperatures in the southern Mexican market city of Mérida. Zoo animals could be seen enjoying an icy retreat to beat the heat. We'll leave you with those visuals. I'll see you again here on WION Live broadcast very soon. Join Nina Maria Potts for the Thursday edition of our Washington programme. And thanks for watching WION. World is One.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
1 trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. 1 planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart.
There are many other
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Ollie Barrett, live from London, and these are the headlines. A UK court issues a formal order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States to face trial over the publication of secret files relating to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will set off for India within hours, despite pressure at home to resign over lockdown-breaching gatherings. After nearly 2 months under siege, the southern city of Mariupol in Ukraine could fall into Russian hands as soon as today, as the two sides agree to a humanitarian corridor to allow civilians to flee. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen brace for a televised debate with millions of voters still up for grabs, days before polls open in the presidential election runoff in France. Scientists at Europe's Physics Research Centre will this week fire up the 27-kilometre-long Large Hadron Collider after a shutdown for maintenance and upgrades was prolonged by COVID-19 delays. And the Kremlin says the expected ban of Russian tennis players from Wimbledon over Moscow's military campaign in Ukraine would be unacceptable. A British court has issued an order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States. He's wanted there for trial over the publication of secret files relating to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The decision now rests with the Interior Minister of the UK, Priti Patel, although Assange's lawyers may still appeal to the High Court if she approves the extradition. The procedural step today in the long-running and high-profile legal battle was announced at a hearing in central London. It follows a decision in March to deny Australian-born Assange permission to appeal against his extradition. If the extradition order is indeed signed, Assange can try to challenge the decision by judicial review. The 50-year-old is wanted in the United States on 18 criminal charges, including breaking a spying law after WikiLeaks published thousands of secret US files back in 2010. He has been in a southeast London jail since 2019. Before that, he was holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in the British capital for 7 years. He continues to deny any wrongdoing. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will face a vote in the House of Commons on Thursday on whether he misled Parliament. Lawmakers will decide whether Boris Johnson should be referred for an investigation over his Partygate statements to parliamentarians previously. But he won't be there. He sets off for India later today. He's scheduled to attend events in the western state of Gujarat, followed by a diplomatic visit to New Delhi. The Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has granted a request from opposition MPs for a vote. The House will debate on Thursday whether Johnson misled Parliament when he previously said that COVID-19 lockdown rules weren't broken. On Tuesday, Boris Johnson offered an unreserved apology to the Parliament after paying a fine for breaching lockdown at a 2020 birthday celebration. It wasn't good enough for Labour leader Keir Starmer, though.
Let me begin in all humility by saying that on the 12th of April, I received a fixed penalty notice relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. I paid the fine immediately and I offered the British people a full apology. And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
The motion for Thursday is expected to ask MPs to decide whether to refer Boris Johnson to the Privileges Committee. Under parliamentary rules, UK government ministers are expected to resign for knowingly misleading Parliament and to correct the record as soon as possible. Last week, Boris Johnson became the first British Prime Minister to be sanctioned for breaking the law, along with his wife and the British Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. Only a few Conservative MPs are currently calling for the Prime Minister to resign, and so the Thursday vote is not expected to succeed for opposition parties. But he remains under huge pressure ahead of local, council and mayoral elections scheduled for May the 5th. When it comes to India, the Prime Minister will begin his trip with investment announcements in key industries in both the UK and India. He'll then move to New Delhi to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday. That meeting will focus on India-UK strategic defence and diplomatic and economic partnerships. And our correspondent Chris Jones has sent us this report from London.
This is a trip that's been planned for a while, and the UK is facing many other issues as well as this Partygate scandal, including the recovery from COVID-19 and of course the energy crisis at the moment. And this trip to India is something that Boris Johnson is very keen on going ahead. He said that as we face threats to our peace and prosperity from autocratic states, it's vital that democracies and friends stick together. So he very much wants to go to India to talk about economic trade and how the two countries can come together. Now, there will of course be critics who say that he should stay in the UK and defend his cause. We of course heard those apologies on Tuesday, and the Labour Party was extremely critical of that. But nevertheless, the Prime Minister will probably travel to India to talk about economic ties there, and the debate will go ahead without him. So I think it will unlikely have an impact on the debate and the resulting vote. So we'll just really have to see how that one pans out.
Russia has once again issued an ultimatum to Ukrainian soldiers in Mariupol to lay down their arms and surrender. The proposal is likely again to be ignored.
Russia was intensifying its attack on Ukraine's east on Tuesday as it sought a decisive victory in Mariupol, prompting Western governments to pledge more arms and sanctions. Thousands of Russian troops backed by artillery and rocket barrages were advancing in what Ukrainian officials called the Battle of the Donbass. Russia bombarded the Azovstal steel plant, the main remaining stronghold in Mariupol, with bunker-buster bombs, a Ukrainian presidential advisor said late on Tuesday, after an ultimatum by Russia for Ukrainian troops to lay down their weapons had lapsed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Moscow for blocking any attempts to organize humanitarian corridors and save people.
The Russian army will forever inscribe itself in world history as perhaps the most barbaric and inhuman army in the world, deliberately killing civilians, destroying residential quarters and civilian infrastructure, and using all kinds of weapons, including those prohibited by international conventions, is already the brand signature of the Russian army.
The United States, Canada, Britain, France, and Germany on Tuesday pledged more support to Ukraine, including sending heavy artillery and ammunition. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby.
I would just say, without getting into what other nations are providing, that they have received additional platforms and parts to be able to increase their fleet size, their aircraft fleet size. I think I'd leave it at that.
In Mariupol, a humanitarian catastrophe has unfolded. Tens of thousands of residents have been trapped with no access to food or water, and bodies litter the streets. Ukraine believes more than 20,000 civilians have died there. Russia has denied targeting civilians in its invasion of Ukraine and says without evidence that signs of atrocities were staged. Video released by Ukraine's Azov battalion purported to show people living in the underground network beneath the steel plant, where they say hundreds of women, children, and elderly civilians are sheltering with diminishing supplies.
We lost our home. We lost our livelihood. We want to live a normal, peaceful life. We want to get out of here. There are lots of children in here. They're hungry. Get us out of here, we beg you. We've already cried out all the tears we have. We can't cry anymore.
Reuters could not independently verify where or when the video was shot. Shells and rockets also hit Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, officials said, wrecking apartment blocks and other buildings. Officials said 4 people were killed and 14 wounded. Reuters journalists saw the bodies of 3 people, apparently killed by shrapnel, lying on the pavement.
Finance ministers and business leaders from the world's richest countries will meet today in Washington, D.C. They'll address a host of global challenges, from rising debt to a looming food crisis. The war in Ukraine is likely to dominate the first meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. According to senior US officials, US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will boycott some sessions if Russian officials are present. Other countries are expected to follow that stance. The Treasury Secretary Yellen will, however, attend the opening session to show support for the Ukrainian finance minister who's flying in from Kiev. Russian finance ministry officials are expected to participate in the event remotely. France has signalled it will participate in the boycott. German officials say Berlin will not, insisting instead it will send strong messages during and after the meetings. Many of the participating countries have condemned Russia over Ukraine. China and India have not. Several other wealthy nations, including much of Europe, however, depend heavily on Russian energy.
Venez dans mes bras. Ces violences, ces incestes, le soir revenir dans l'Europe. Personne jamais ne relève leur incohérence.
Just 4 days now until France's final presidential runoff. Senior political allies are warning the incumbent President Emmanuel Macron is not certain to win, despite polls indicating that his lead over his far-right challenger Marine Le Pen may be widening. French Prime Minister Jean Castex has asserted it's too early to claim victory. Castex's immediate predecessor Edouard Philippe also said that nothing should be taken for granted, hinting at a possible low turnout during Sunday's presidential runoff. Macron and Le Pen will face off in a televised debate later today.
Nous, on est de la communauté malgache, mais on vote pour Macron. On est avec vous.
Next to Greece, known for its ancient ruins, its whitewashed villages, its sunny beaches. But tourism has faced significant restrictions because of the pandemic, like much of the rest of the world. And the industry in Greece is now hoping for a bumper summer season this year.
The summer tourism season in Greece is all set to begin. Soon after Orthodox Easter on April 24th, the island nation expects more visitors and a revenue hike. And that's why COVID restrictions are now lifted. Masks are no longer required indoors. COVID vaccination certificates in restaurants and open public areas are no longer mandatory. In fact, officials are also considering lifting another important mandate, that of presenting an EU digital COVID certificate to enter the country.
We decided to go to Greece because we went to Greece before the corona crisis and we had lovely memories, and we just thought about coming back to Greece as a start post-corona and post the crisis. And it's a great feeling to be back.
The decision to ease the restrictions is based on the epidemiological data and expert recommendations. This according to Greece's health ministry. Measures will now be evaluated in September. COVID infections have drastically reduced in the Mediterranean island. 72% of its 11 million population are now fully vaccinated. Tourism has a significant impact on Greece's economy. The industry provides employment to roughly 759,000 people. Greek tourism's contribution to the country's GDP was around 38 million euros. This was prior to the pandemic. In 2020, the numbers fell rapidly. As countries across the world impose lockdowns and travel restrictions, currently the war in Ukraine has also caused global price rise. But local businesses hope that this season will bring them some respite.
We hope the season will be better than last year. We started off with very good indications, but because of the war and rising prices, it has stalled a bit now.
With about 33 million visitors, Greece set a record in 2019. It became one of the most visited countries in the world. Today, Greece hopes to earn at least 80% of revenues it raked in 2019. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Netflix's bad year has just got worse. After shares tanked earlier in the year, the streaming leader has lost subscribers according to its first quarter earnings. Netflix shed 200,000 of them in just 3 months in 2022.
Netflix reported losing subscribers for the first time in over a decade on Tuesday and said it's considering offering a lower-priced service plan supported by ads to combat its lagging growth. Citing rising inflation, its suspension of service in Russia, and fierce competition from other streaming services, Netflix said it lost 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter, a sharp reverse in fortune for a company that thrived throughout the global health crisis. And despite the return of highly anticipated series such as Stranger Things and Ozark, the company further forecast it would lose 2 million subscribers in the second quarter, sending its stock tumbling more than 20% in after-hours trading on Tuesday. CEO Reed Hastings has long dismissed the idea of offering an ad-supported service option at a lower price point. But he confirmed in an interview with investors Tuesday that his thinking had changed, citing the success of similar offerings from rivals like HBO Max and Disney+. Netflix's gloomy predictions come as competitors like HBO Max and Apple TV churn out high-quality content, intensifying the so-called streaming wars. Netflix is also planning to clamp down on account sharing, practiced by nearly 100 million households around the world. And as growth slows in mature markets like the U.S., the company is increasingly focused on other parts of the world and investing in local language content. But streaming shows isn't the only form of entertainment competing for consumers' time. In Deloitte's latest digital media trends survey, the majority of Gen Z and millennial consumers polled said they spend more time on TikTok and YouTube than streaming services.
Moving on now to the high-profile Hollywood defamation case. Johnny Depp has testified in court in Virginia, claiming that he has never struck his ex-wife Amber Heard.
Nothing of the kind had ever happened.
Actor Johnny Depp took the witness stand on Tuesday in his defamation case against ex-wife Amber Heard, calling her claims that he physically abused her, quote, heinous and disturbing.
But never did I myself reach the point of striking Miss Heard in any way, nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
Depp, speaking softly and slowly for nearly 3 hours, said in a Virginia courtroom that it was a complete shock when Heard accused him 6 years ago of becoming violent during their relationship. He said it was important to set the record straight, not just for himself, but also his 2 children from a previous relationship who were in high school at the time.
I felt it my responsibility to stand up not only for myself in that instance, but stand up for my children. It's very strange when one day you're Cinderella, so to speak, and then in 0.6 seconds you're Quasimodo.
Depp is suing Heard for $50 million, alleging she defamed him when she wrote a December 2018 opinion piece in the Washington Post about being a survivor of domestic abuse. Attorneys for Heard have argued that she told the truth and that her opinion was protected as free speech under the First Amendment. Depp admitted to taking drugs, which included an opiates addiction he said he has kicked, but claimed Tuesday that Heard, quote, grossly embellished his substance abuse. Heard watched his testimony with little expression, occasionally jotting notes. Less than 2 years ago, Depp lost a libel case against The Sun, a British tabloid that labeled him a wife-beater. A London High Court judge ruled he had repeatedly assaulted Heard and put her in fear for her life.
Byzantine music is a 2,000-year-old tradition that Cypriots are determined to keep alive. We'll leave you with that story. Thanks as ever for watching. See you again, same time tomorrow.
From the middle of the Vespers until the end. The lights are shut down and a slow hymn is sung. And this is followed by a solo part that is different in every afternoon mass. This has a very high theological meaning as it prepares us for the passion and resurrection of Christ.
As things slowly return to normal, chanters have made a comeback to the churches for the traditional Byzantine chants. A 2,000-year-old tradition originating from the Byzantine Empire. In 2019, the United Nations Educational and Scientific Cultural Organization added Byzantine music to its list of intangible cultural heritage, describing it as living art. And celebrations this Orthodox Easter saw young members of the Cypriots melodious Byzantine choir chant these monophonic verses from the new system of chants that was introduced in the year 1814.
This manuscript is from the 14th century and it belongs to the Cathedral of St. John the Theologian, known as Bibi from the Arabic word Habibi. And it shows clearly the history of the Byzantine music. And not only this manuscript, but the other ones we have here also have that date from the beginning of the times of the writing of the music notes until our days.
While families prayed and the choir chanted these traditional hymns, there were also those who rung in the Holy Week with a modern twist by playing electronic version of the Byzantine music.
Many other.
This is right, Arab.
Stay connected with the world through WION.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday. South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban controlled town.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches and they will
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending.
Hello and welcome and thanks for tuning in. You're watching WION Fine Print with me, Priyanka Sharma, and here are the top stories that we are tracking at this hour. French President Emmanuel Macron and the far-right's Marine Le Pen to go head-to-head in a Crunch TV debate in a few hours from now, as opinion polls show Macron widening his lead ahead of Sunday's runoff.
La haine, les vérités alternatives.
In a setback to Imran Khan, a Pakistan court orders the government to make public details of the gifts received by the former Prime Minister since assuming office in August 2018. Imran had claimed those were his gifts. After nearly 2 months under siege, Mariupol could fall into Russian hands within hours. A Ukrainian official says the same, as the two sides agreed on a humanitarian corridor to allow civilians to flee the port city. Meanwhile, Finland's parliament begins a debate on whether to seek NATO membership or not after Russia's invasion of Ukraine sparked a surge in political and public support for joining the military alliance. And Wimbledon organisers to ban Russian and Belarusian players from this year's Grand Slam tournament due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to reports, the Kremlin says that such a ban would be unacceptable.
Dans mes bras, venez dans mes bras. Ces violences, ces incestes, le soir revenir dans l'Europe. Personne jamais ne relève leur incohérence.
The battle for who will lead France is now heating up. On one side is incumbent Emmanuel Macron, on the other side is far-right leader Marine Le Pen. And this Sunday, France will decide which of the two will lead the country. But before that, the two leaders will face off in a crucial televised debate. Both Macron and Marine Le Pen have different visions for France, and today's debate in a few hours from now will give us a clear picture of what these two leaders want for France's future. Currently, opinion polls are in the favour of Macron. He has consolidated his lead over Marine Le Pen. This as both leaders try to woo voters ahead of the runoff. Estimates suggest that he will receive around 54 to 56% of the votes. But this is a much smaller gap than that in 2017. In 2017, Macron beat Le Pen with 66.1%. Analysts also say that a Le Pen victory cannot be ruled out at this point, even though it is likely. It is less likely at this point. Today, the two candidates will face off in a single televised debate. This one will be especially decisive. Le Pen's poor performance in the 2017 debate played a major role in her defeat. And this time around, she is expected to fare better. Neither candidate has enough die-hard supporters to take them to power. So the key here is to convince voters that the other candidate is worse. What left-wing voters do is even more crucial for the outcome. Macron's style and policies have upset many on the left, so he finds it even harder to get them back to him. Whoever wins on Sunday will win with a small majority. If Macron wins, for instance, he will face a difficult second mandate. There will be little to no grace period, and voters will protest against his policies. If Le Pen wins, however, France could undergo a radical change. Its domestic and international policies are expected to change, and street protests could start immediately. Either way, the winner's first challenge will be to win the June parliamentary elections. Currently, the biggest issues of the polls include France's economy for one, immigration policies, the country's security, and of course, the war in Ukraine. Purchasing power is a top concern for voters as of now. Marine Le Pen had promised a horde of measures. She says she will scrap income tax for those under 30, raise wages, and reduce the VAT on fuel. It is an issue that she has aggressively campaigned on. And as for Macron, he says that the government has already spent billions on this. Surveys show that voters are unhappy with Macron's economic policy, but currently, unemployment in France is at its lowest in years. The election campaign started amid the war in Ukraine. Polls showed an initial boost for Macron, but that has waned. Emmanuel Macron has called the election a referendum on Europe. Le Pen, on the other hand, has come far from her original plan to leave the European Union. However, many believe that that is her ultimate plan. The other major issue in these elections is immigration and security. Le Pen wants a referendum on immigration. She plans for strict rules on who can enter France and become French. Marine Le Pen wants French nationals to be given housing and social services ahead of those who have migrated to France. Macron, on the other hand, is focusing on security. He plans to free up the police from administrative tasks and double the number of police officials on the street by 2030. Currently, Marine Le Pen is trying to present a more moderate face to voters. Somewhat pivoting from her usual topics of immigration and Islam, her party is seen playing down the hijab ban proposal, saying that it is not her priority anymore in the fight against extremism. Earlier, Le Pen wanted to ban women from wearing the headscarf and fine them for doing so. Sunday's vote in France will determine the future of France. Will it be pro-European centrist President Emmanuel Macron or the far-right anti-immigration Marine Le Pen? Currently, Macron has consolidated his lead over Marine Le Pen as both the leaders try to woo voters ahead of the runoff. And we at WION, of course, will continue to track the French presidential elections, bringing you the most comprehensive coverage of who will run the European Union's second largest economy for the next 5 years. With just days left for the election runoff, what is the mood on the ground like and what can we expect in this crucial tight race? Let's now introduce our guests on this broadcast. Joining us live is Alice Coffin from Paris. She's a French journalist, activist and member of the Council of Paris. And of course, for more on-ground insights, our correspondent Ross Cullen joins us live from the streets of Paris. I welcome you both to WION World is One. Ross, let's begin with you now. What are the people of France expecting in this tight race at this point, just a few hours ahead of the crucial debate? Analysts also say that a Le Pen victory cannot be ruled out, even though it is less likely.
Yes, this debate, which takes place tonight at 9 p.m. Local time, about two and a half hours under the lights of a TV set, live on the main channels here in France. It's really a centrepiece of this 2-week campaign between the first and second rounds. Just the top two contenders who came through the first round going head to head, trying to promote and explain their policies while trying to deconstruct the argument of their opponent, trying to lay bare where they feel there are weaknesses in their opponent's argument, while trying to talk up their agenda and policies of what they would like to do in the next 5 years. We have seen those polls which are showing Emmanuel Macron about a 10-point lead at the moment, more or less 55 to 45 in terms of percentage of votes in the second round runoff on Sunday. So it is much tighter than it was last time around, because last time around it was these two again. 2017 saw Emmanuel Macron debate Marine Le Pen, and she put in a particularly poor performance at that time round, which almost sealed Emmanuel Macron's victory. This time round, her advisors say that she is going to be much more focused. She hasn't watched that appearance from 5 years ago. She's been focused on moving forward and moderating her image, and they say that she will be much clearer and much more focused in this debate this time around than she was 5 years ago. So there is a mountain in terms of the polls. 10 to 12 points is a big lead, but it is still surmountable for Marine Le Pen, particularly if she puts in a good performance this evening.
Right, absolutely. We'll of course be tracking that crucial crunch debate. Very quickly, Ross, just a final question there. As we've been telling our viewers, it is a tight race seemingly, but what are the issues that the French voters are most concerned about at this point? The French economy and immigration seem to be top on the agenda.
Top on the agenda is the cost of living crisis, an issue which Marine Le Pen has been campaigning relentlessly on since last year, visiting villages and towns up and down the country, explaining her economic policies. Voters are also concerned about the war in Ukraine and the ongoing impact in France and across wider Europe of the conflict we have here in Europe. And also they are concerned about the environment, along with healthcare and employment, other top topics on the agenda for French voters when they make their minds up and cast their ballots this Sunday.
Absolutely, Ross Cullen, thanks so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION. Now, for more insights into what lies ahead, let's now go across to Alice Coffin, who also joins us from Paris. Alice, thanks for staying on. My first question to you: Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are preparing for what seems to be a crunch election duel of sorts. Supporters of the president are already warning him against complacency despite a solid poll lead. What are your predictions?
Well, the debate of tonight will be watched with a lot of despair by a large part of French population, since both look like enemies to them. It's a very, very different situation from when it was in 2017. Emmanuel Macron back then was seen as new in politics, and some voters has huge expectations. Now it's quite the contrary. His 5 years at the presidency have been very rough years, with huge demonstrations in France, so he's facing a strong opposition. And on the other hand, we have the far right, where it seems like a huge trauma also to see how tight the polls are, and not ruling out, like you say, the possibility of the far right to rule France next Sunday. So it's like a huge trauma here in France, what's happening and what will be happening tonight. It's a crucial point indeed. And what you said was quite right. Is what's at stake there is those two. They have to convince people for whom they seem like pretty much like devils, like people which have to be fought on a daily basis. And till now, what's really you've been using the word placency. And indeed, we haven't seen any real move from Emmanuel Macron to go and get to the left voters. His moves were really, really small on this. So probably there could be some expectation that he tries a little harder tonight.
Alice, the next leader of France, I want to talk about the bigger picture here. The next leader of France will take power at a crucial juncture in geopolitics. The Russia-Ukraine war, economic recovery, the role of France within the European Union, and even climate change. All these topics are now taking center stage. So what will be the deciding factor for the French voter?
Your reporter on the ground said it quite clearly. Here is a lot about cost of living, but you cannot exclude the international issues at stakes, where there are planet and environmental issues, or the war. On the environmental issues, there's been some really bad hits on the media for not talking about anything about climate during the whole presidential campaign.
What will be decisive?
What will be decisive is probably when you're watching a debate, it's not so much about the real big issues at stake. It's about the way the candidates talk, so the way they behave. 5 years ago, Marine Le Pen was hugely laughed at for the way she even used her hands, or even the way of talking. It's more about small issues when you watch TV debate and watch. It's going to be scrutinized is the way they react to each other, whether they go in anger, whether they manage to stay very strong in their arguments. And that's more the things at stakes which I watch at.
Absolutely. Alice Coffin, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION. Of course, we'll be tracking all the updates coming from the crucial crunch debate.
As France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term? Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. WION continuous coverage.
Since 1956, when the office of president was created in Pakistan, and until 2010, there have been multiple changes in the role of the president of Pakistan. The position was sometimes strengthened and sometimes reduced to a ceremonial one alone. Just like how it is currently, the Constitution prohibits the president from directly interfering or running the government. But what does the government do when the head of state, the president, oversteps? This is exactly what Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and his government are mulling over. Leaders from the ruling coalition are now hitting out at the Pakistan President Arif Alvi and are accusing him of not carrying out his constitutional duties. Earlier this month, after Imran Khan's ouster, just hours before Shehbaz Sharif took oath, Arif Alvi fell ill. The president complained of discomfort and went on leave without any explanation. The same was repeated when Shehbaz Sharif's cabinet was to be sworn in. The oath-taking ceremony was initially delayed by a day after President Alvi refused to administer the oath to them. He apparently excused himself from the ceremony. The Senate chairman then administered the oath to the cabinet. And that's not all. On Monday, President Alvi instructed the Punjab governor, Omar Sarfaraz Cheema, to continue to hold office. And according to a President House statement, the president said that the Punjab governor would continue to serve till a decision of summary for his removal was taken. The coalition government is miffed with this move because the Punjab governor had refused to administer the oath to the new Punjab Chief Minister, Hamza Shehbaz Sharif's son. They are asking the president to resign. In a tweet, the PMLN leader, Mariam Nawaz, said that if the president does not have the courage to fulfill the constitutional responsibilities, he must resign. The former joint opposition was successful in ousting Imran Khan, but now they are facing a challenge from the head of the state. The PMLN leader And leaders, rather, are asking if Arif Alvi is the president of Pakistan or just the PTI. The man in the spotlight, President Arif Alvi, is a founding member of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or the PTI. He even participated in preparing the party constitution of the PTI. In 2001, he became the vice president of the party. He was elected as president in September of 2018. And a month after, Imran Khan was sworn in as prime minister. So is he, as president, finding it difficult to keep away his political alignments? The coalition government certainly wants to change the head of the state. But how easy or difficult is it for them? According to Article 47 of Pakistan's constitution, the president may be impeached on a charge of violating the constitution or gross misconduct. The president may also be removed from the office on the grounds of physical or mental incapacity. And for this, not less than 1/2 of the total membership of either house may give a written notice of its intention to move a resolution for the removal or impeachment to the Speaker of the National Assembly. The Speaker then shall within 3 days send a notice to the President and summon the two houses in a joint setting not earlier than 7 days and not later than 14 days. The joint sitting may then investigate the cause on which the notice is founded. The President shall also have the right to appear and be represented during the investigation if and before the joint sitting, if a resolution is passed at the joint sitting by no less than 2/3 of Parliament. The President will then have to cease to hold office immediately. So the question is, can Shehbaz Sharif pull off another Parliament victory? This time challenging the President of Pakistan himself. Now, to answer some of these questions, our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik now joins us live for more on this. Anas, thanks for joining us. Now, as we've been telling our viewers, the political turmoil is only worsening in Pakistan. Leaders from the ruling coalition are now hitting out at the president himself, accusing him of not carrying out his constitutional duties. Tell us more about this.
Well, we've seen that the president has been absent from key events, be that the oath-taking of the Prime Minister that took place last Monday night, or be the recent oath-taking of the Federal Cabinet. In both the occasions, the President had excused himself on medical grounds, and that is the reason we saw that today, when that courtesy call between the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, and the President, Dr. Arif Alvi, began, it began on the note where Shehbaz Sharif actually inquired about the President's health. That is one point. We've seen critique being done on the role of the President for one very reason: his association with the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or the PTI, and his long association with the chairman of PTI, that is Imran Khan. He was a member of the parliament on behalf of the PTI as well, but then he later resigned and went on to become the president, and since then he's been in power. Now, there have been talks to impeach him, and Fawad Chaudhry in a tweet had said that if a president would ask for a vote of confidence from the Prime Minister, and in case if one of the party or the two party abstains, then there can be trouble for the Imran Khan, for the Shehbaz Sharif-led government. That being said, that is one of the key points, and that is the reason we're seeing this huddle being done with regards to some movement towards the impeachment of the president, though it will take time for one very reason: to gather that 2/3 figure of for the impeachment of the president in both the houses combined. That is something that needs to be worked out. Priyanka.
Right, Anas, thanks so much for all those updates. Thanks for joining us on WION at this hour. Now, Imran Khan might be out of power, but he's definitely not away from controversy. With a new day comes a new twist. A change in government in Pakistan has opened a new chapter in the Toshkhana saga. In the latest, the Islamabad High Court has now declared that gifts meant for the Pakistan Prime Minister were not to be taken home. The court order comes after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif accused the ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan of selling gifts from the state treasury. The High Court has directed the Deputy Attorney General to publicise the gifts presented to the former Pak Prime Minister. Pakistan maintains a Toshkhana or state treasury, where gifts received by foreign heads of state are kept. Shehbaz Sharif has now accused his predecessor and the ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan of misusing this treasury. Sharif claims that Imran Khan sold expensive gifts that were received from foreign states, including a wristwatch from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The PMLN accuses Imran Khan of selling state gifts worth some $753,000 from the Treasury. Responding to these charges, Imran Khan said that they were his gifts, so it was his choice whether to keep them or not. According to Pakistan's law, precious gifts received from foreign dignitaries are supposed to be deposited with the state treasury. In case a state official wants to keep the gifts, they have to pay a retainer fee. Earlier it was 20% of the price, but Khan's government revised it to 50% in 2018. But misusing the privilege by undervaluing such items is far from uncommon. The same matter was also the crux of a reference filed by the National Accountability Bureau in 2020 against former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and former President Asif Ali Zardari. During his tenure, Imran Khan received 58 gifts in all, worth more than $753,000 from world leaders, and reports say he retained all of them either by paying a negligible amount or even without any payment. Sources say that Imran Khan paid nearly $207,000 for gifts valued at more than $753,000, and other gifts worth more than $4,300 were retained without payment. Shehbaz Sharif says that the most expensive among them was sold in Dubai. Gifts received by Imran Khan include a graph watch worth more than $464,000, cufflinks worth $31,000, a pen worth more than $8,000, and a ring worth $114,000. The list, though, does not end here. Imran Khan has also been accused of retaining other gifts, including several Rolex watches, jewellery, dinner sets, iPhones, bags, and even table mats. So far, the PTI leaders have been cagey. They have been giving contradictory statements while keeping the details of the gifts a secret. And if accusations of the Toshkhana being mismanaged are untrue, then Imran Khan must fully cooperate with the probe and reveal all details to the public. Let's now take a quick break on WION. Don't go too far. Global news updates continue on the other side. Thanks for watching.
Sharma Upadhyay reports from Tel Aviv, Colombo, Wuhan, Bogota.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
hoping to Taliban had fallen out.
Hours of non-stop live broadcasts. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. See, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensified. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma and here are the top stories that we're tracking as of now. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to visit India tomorrow as he faces the Partygate heat back home for breaching coronavirus rules with illegal gatherings during the lockdown period. A UK court issues a formal order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States to face trial. The decision now rests with the UK Interior Minister, but Assange can still appeal. The United States slams the new security pact between China and the Solomon Islands, describing it as shadowy. The deal announced on Tuesday by Beijing had faced opposition from the United States and Australia. Shanghai's COVID death toll rises to 17 after 7 new deaths were reported on Tuesday, but authorities in China's financial hub eased lockdown rules despite the rising death toll. And Wimbledon organisers banned Russian and Belarusian players from this year's Grand Slam tournament due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Kremlin calls the ban unacceptable. The British Prime Minister will face a crucial vote in the House of Commons on Thursday. The lawmakers will decide whether Boris Johnson should be referred for an investigation over his Partygate statements to parliamentarians. This vote is expected to coincide with the Prime Minister's two-day India visit. He's scheduled for events in the western state of Gujarat, followed by a diplomatic visit to New Delhi. The Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has now granted a request from the opposition MPs for a vote. The House debated on whether Johnson misled Parliament when he initially said that no rules were broken, as allegations of lockdown-breaching parties quickly escalated into a full-blown Partygate scandal. Last night, Boris Johnson offered an unreserved apology to Parliament and said that he had already changed the way that Number 10 operates. But the opposition leader, Keir Starmer, called Prime Minister's apology a joke and quickly cornered him on misleading claims about not breaking any rules.
Let me begin in all humility by saying that on the 12th of April, I received a fixed penalty notice relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. I paid the fine immediately, and I offered the British people a full apology. And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. The Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
The exact wording of the motion is yet to be tabled, but it will ask the MPs to decide whether to refer Johnson to the Committee of Privileges under parliamentary rules. The UK government ministers are expected to resign for knowingly misleading Parliament and correct the record as soon as possible. Last week, Boris Johnson became the first British Prime Minister to be sanctioned for breaking the law. Along with his wife and the British Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, all three immediately paid up their fines and apologised in the wake of the notices. The Conservative Party has stood by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, while only a handful of them have voiced criticism. Therefore, the upcoming parliamentary vote is expected to go in Johnson's favour, but it will mark yet another dent to his leadership ahead of the local council and mayoral elections scheduled for May the 5th. In talking about the India visit, the Prime Minister will begin his trip with investment announcements in key industries in both the UK and India. He will then proceed to New Delhi to meet with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday. The meeting will focus on the India-UK strategic defence and diplomatic and as well as the economic partnership, of course. And for more insights, we are now being joined by senior journalist Alex Erro from London. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. My first question to you. The British Prime Minister will face a crucial vote in the House of Commons on Thursday, and this vote is expected to coincide with the Prime Minister's two-day visit to India, a crucial one. What do you make of the timing of this visit, especially with the Partygate scandal heating up at home?
Well, to say the truth, I think it's actually quite good timing for Boris Johnson, because it gives him a chance to kind of ride out the scandal and wait for the news cycle to move on. You know, he's not going to be at home under so much scrutiny. He's going to be on the road. And then there's always a chance that just with that bit of time, something else might happen to draw the attention away from his parties and other scandals. And also it gives him an opportunity to act as a serious statesman, you know, meeting with Prime Minister Modi. And I think that can only help with his public image, or at least the one that he wants to project.
Right. Now, Alex, we saw the apology earlier tendered by Boris Johnson. Calls for his resignation are growing as we speak. Do you think the Johnson government and Johnson himself will survive the political storm?
Well, to tell you the truth, I think he probably will, because first of all, Boris Johnson has a long history of surviving political scandals in a way that other politicians don't. And also I don't see the Conservative Party being able to remove him as their leader, because there is no alternative, really. No one in the Conservative Party is a really standout candidate. You had Rishi Sunak, but he recently went through his own scandal, which has really dented his public standing. And Liz Truss is the other big name, but she's not particularly popular with voters or with the Conservative Party. So I would predict that he'll survive this one.
Right. Alex, thanks so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One.
No problem. Thank you.
And let's move on now. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has left the world divided. For many, he's a man fighting for the truth. But for his critics, Assange is a criminal who endangered lives. Since 2012, he has been on a run, trying to escape an extradition to the United States. And today, he's one step closer to it. A British court has now issued an order to extradite him. The decision now lies in the hands of Interior Minister Priti Patel. But even if she approves the extradition bid, Assange's lawyers may still appeal to the High Court. Julian Assange is wanted in the United States for releasing classified documents. Assange has spent most of the past decade either in custody or holed up in an embassy trying to avoid extradition. So let's now go through some of the key details of his case. Julian Assange founded WikiLeaks in 2006. He created an internet-based dead letter drop website. This means that leakers could essentially drop any classified or sensitive information. On April 2010, a leaked video from a US helicopter emerged on WikiLeaks. The video showed an airstrike by the US military, one that killed civilians in Baghdad, including 2 news staff. Again, after nearly 3 months, about 90,000 documents carrying US military reports on the Afghanistan war were released. The same year in October, 400,000 classified military files on the Iraq war became public. This was followed by the release of thousands of diplomatic cables. This included candid views on foreign leaders and blunt assessments of security threats. In 2012, a ruling said that Assange could be extradited to Sweden, so Assange took refuge in Ecuador's embassy in London. Left-wing President Rafael Correa granted him asylum in August, but things changed in 2019. Ecuador revoked his citizenship on April 10th. The very next day, he was dragged out of the embassy in London. In January last year, a London court blocked his extradition, and now the court has ruled that he can in fact be extradited. Currently, the WikiLeaks founder is still behind bars. Earlier, the US State Department charged Assange with violating the US Espionage Act, and this is for publishing military and diplomatic files in 2010. He faces up to 18 charges, 17 of which fall under this act. If convicted, he faces jail terms of up to 175 years. Mark Zuckerberg may have changed Facebook's company name to Meta, but it seems that it is not helping the social media giant much in restoring the company's reputation. It continues to get caught up in controversies. Users, investors and regulators alike are all slamming it for violating user privacy, fueling hate and spreading disinformation. The troubles for Facebook-owned Meta and its CEO are far from over. The company is under fire once again. A group that represents some of Meta's institutional investors has urged shareholders of the Facebook owner to vote against the re-election of 2 of its board members, Mark Anderson and Peggy Alford. Peggy Alford joined Meta's board in 2019, whereas venture capitalist Mark Anderson has served on the company's board since June of 2008. And this is what the group said, and I quote, "We believe the lack of independence of board members Peggy Alford and Mark L. Anderson is undermining the board's ability to adequately oversee the management team and represent shareholders' best interests. They urge the nomination of new highly qualified independent directors. The investors have also urged the board to implement certain governance reform. They want to eliminate the dual-class structure and separate the functions of the chief executive officer and chairman. Meta, which is scheduled to hold its annual meeting on May 25th, has declined to comment on the matter. It seems that time is not good for the world's popular social networks. While Meta is facing criticism from investors, Twitter is currently shielding itself from hostile acquisition bids. Now, the idea of a 4-day work week sounds great, right? A 3-day weekend, after all. More time to pursue your hobbies, plan a short getaway, and even complete all those tasks. Iceland, Sweden, Japan, Scotland, they're all experimenting with a shorter work week. They say it boosts employee well-being and productivity. Think again. Are we cramming the same amount of work in a shorter period of time? Will this lead to more stress and fatigue for all of us? Let's explore. Thank God it's Friday. Hang on, not today. We're just saying out loud the words which we look forward to all week long. We plan our weekends, packing them up to the brim, socializing with friends and family, wrapping up those chores, squeezing in some essential grocery shopping, planning our meals and workouts for the upcoming week. And as Sunday wraps up, the manic Monday dread sets in. We've all been through it, don't lie, living from weekend to weekend. But what if your weekend was longer? What if you had more time to unwind? Welcome to a 4-day week. A working model being sampled across the world with a mixed bag of responses. Spain has tried it, agreeing to a 32-hour work week without affecting employee salaries. Iceland ran the world's largest trial of a shorter working week from 2015 to 2019, and everyone was seemingly happier, healthier, and more productive, all this according to a study. Scotland also joined the club, encouraging the perfect work-life balance. All this without any loss of pay. Ireland is also trying out the same. 2 years ago, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern also called for more flexible working hours. Several companies in Japan are also joining the 4-week bandwagon, trying to break away from a toxic workaholic culture. The US state of California could also move to shorten the work week for employees of large companies. There are more hoping to join this list soon. Naturally, a compressed work schedule is not without its advantages. There are claims of increased productivity, there is more time to spend with family, decreased overhead costs, and of course, money saved in daily commuting. But there is a price to pay. Imagine working for longer hours every week. You'll still have the same deadlines and tasks to accomplish, the same school schedules for kids, workouts, nutrition planning, grocery shopping, and then a longer work day. Not on paper perhaps, but you will be cramming in more work in the same time or more, just to have that elusive longer weekend. This is bound to have an impact on your health. See the math here. You work 5 8-hour shifts or 4 10-hour shifts. This can lead to fatigue and stress that may accumulate over time. So what's the best choice? Well, it's different for everyone. We need flexible working options. The pandemic has taught us that. Simply deleting a day from our work week will not help. A 4-day work week is great as a metaphor for flexibility. But companies need to do more, just as employees need to find that perfect balance. Because a 3-day weekend is not worth years of health issues in the long run. Look at the big picture always. Bureau Report, WION World is One. And on to sports now. The world's oldest and most prestigious tennis tournament, Wimbledon, has issued a full ban on Russian and Belarusian players following the invasion of Ukraine. The grass court major is the first tournament to suspend players from the two countries. Currently, they are allowed to play on the ATP and WTA tours as neutral athletes. And they have also been allowed to enter the next month's French Open. The move means that the current men's world number 2, Daniil Medvedev of Russia, will not compete in London, while women's Belarusian stars Aryna Sabalenka and 2-time Grand Slam champion Victoria Azarenka will also be affected. And in a statement, the All England Lawn Tennis Club said that it has a responsibility to limit Russia's global influence through the strongest means possible. Russian and Belarusian players will also be banned from playing in any of the other grass court tournaments in the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Russia has already responded to the ban and termed it unacceptable. A Kremlin spokesperson said that the blanket ban hurts the prestige of the tournament, given the country's prowess in the sport. The spokesperson added, and I quote, "To make sports people hostages of political intrigue is unacceptable." Meanwhile, the rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester United might be the most heated in English football. But on Tuesday night, Liverpool showed the gulf in quality between the two sides in a 4-0 drubbing at Anfield. United were without star man Cristiano Ronaldo and could barely keep pace with the brilliant hosts. The informed Luis Diaz opened the scoring early on after being put through by Mohamed Salah. But the goal of the night arrived in the 22nd minute. The Reds came up with a breathtaking move with every player barring one involved in the build-up.
Salah. Henderson.
Jurgen Klopp's side put together 25 passes and the final through ball by Sadio Mane for Mohamed Salah was a thing of beauty. Salah expertly rounded off the move and the strike will surely be a contender for goal of the season.
A simply sumptuous Liverpool goal.
Mane himself got on the score sheet to put the game to bed in the second half and Salah grabbed a second to complete the scoring in the 85th minute. Liverpool are now 2 points clear of title rivals Manchester City, who can regain top spot with a win against Brighton tonight.
Teasingly, tantalisingly, magically, in front of the clock, 4-0 Liverpool. A utopian night for Klopp and the Kop.
Obviously, absolutely outstanding. Yes, Mo scored 2, set up the first. Luis set up Sadio's and get the ball from Mo and all this kind of Diogo came on, that Mo's second up, all these kind of things who couldn't have been better, to be honest. And yes, Thiago played a good game. That's but with his quality, always there comes responsibility. So if you are good, you should better play good as well. And that's what he did tonight, really, again. So from a football point of view, really nothing to moan about. Was a perfect night for us. We don't take these kind of things for granted.
During the match, both Liverpool and Manchester United supporters came together to pay a touching tribute to Cristiano Ronaldo following the death of his newborn son. Both sets of fans held a minute of applause in the 7th minute of the match, which is Ronaldo's shirt number at United. Liverpool fans sang their club's anthem, "You'll Never Walk Alone," while some United fans held up Ronaldo's jersey.
And they're singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" on the back of it for Cristiano Ronaldo. Respectful class.
And players from both teams wore black armbands as a mark of respect. Two Indian films from the South Indian film industries, Prashant Neel's KGF Chapter 2 from the Kannada film industry and the Telugu language epic RRR by S.S. Rajamouli have kept the cash registers ringing, finally signalling an end to the COVID-induced lull. Like most other big releases, both the films were dubbed in 5 different Indian languages, that is Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu and Malayalam. Let's now look at the numbers generated by KGF Chapter 2 first. On its opening Thursday, the Yash starrer crossed the $17 million mark at the domestic box office. The Hindi version alone earned nearly $6.9 million. It crossed the $65 million mark worldwide on its 4th day of release. The present collection stands at $72 million and counting. Last month, it was S.S. Rajamouli's film RRR that had a record-breaking collection spree. Starring actors Ram Charan and J.R. NTR in the lead. The film earned $29 million globally on the first day itself. In India alone, the film had earned $20 million. In its opening weekend, RRR crossed the $65 million mark globally. It is still running successfully at the theatres. The last time that S.S. Rajamouli witnessed such success was with his films Bahubali, The Beginning and Bahubali, The Conclusion. It is noteworthy that South Indian movies are not just minting money in their home markets, but are also now hugely successful across India. Last year, the Hindi-dubbed version of Allu Arjun's Telugu blockbuster Pushpa The Rise received an overwhelming response from the audience. The popularity of Malayalam cinema also started skyrocketing after the advent of OTT platforms. Movies made in different languages, that Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam and Kannada, overshadowed Bollywood releases as well. And the viewers now have given their verdict. They are just looking for good storytelling and clearly they are ready to cross the language barrier as well. And on that note, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thanks for watching WION World is One with me, Priyanka Sharma. Remember to log on to our website, wionnews.com, for more such stories. And stay tuned to WION. Global News continues on the other side.
It's code red for humanity.